This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Interesting developments at OTAs. Eric Ebron, a bust already? And Detroit getting the Super Bowl again? We'll talk about that much more here on the Hindsight 20.
Are you ready? You think you can tell us what to do? You think you can tell us what to wear? You think that you're better? Well, you better get ready. Bow to the masters. Break it down.
I don't care if you're a fan of wrestling, if you don't even know what the Generation X is. This song is awesome. And I'd be a fool not to let this part play out.
Think you can tell me what to do?
You know who you're talking to. What's happening, guys? It's Jerry Mallory, and you're listening to the Hindsight 20 podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. As always, proud member of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Not just me, Doc and Jock, Tigers Talk, you name it. It's all there. Do yourself a favor, subscribe. Go to Podbay if you have Android, and if you have iTunes, you know how to subscribe to a podcast, right? If you don't, look it up, Google it, figure it out. Subscribe, and we'll be right there. Don't forget, I'm also on Twitter at Jerry Mallory NFL, and a proud member, video contributor to, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, in my honest opinion, the number one, not even close, the best Detroit Lions website in the land, prideofdetroit.com. So, like I mentioned on the outset, we're going to talk about OTAs, a few interesting wrinkles that has developed, Pro Football Focus rearing its ugly head once again, this time talking about bust, guys that, we're not talking about that type. We're talking about draft bust, guys that, hey, their careers are over, right? And they mentioned guys from the 2014 draft. Eric Ebron was mentioning that, and we'll talk about that, as well as some sound clips from OTAs. It's good to hear some of the players. You can see them on videos on DetroitLions.com. We'll play some of the clips. You can hear them talking about how great everything is and how everyone's wonderful. The thing with the NFL, and really with a handful, with the exception of a handful of players, with the exception of a handful of coaches, it's a lot of politically correct garbage, right? Well, we know that, but we still like to hear it. And so I'll be playing you a little bit of that politically correct garbage, how great the team is, how everything is wonderful. They'll never sit here and say, you know what? Yeah, Amir Abdullah, I like the kid, but man, he fumbles a lot and he likes to party too much. Like, you'll never hear anything like that. However, it is still good to hear from our boys. So I will play a few sound clips at the end of the show. And also, Detroit in the Renaissance, man, a few, big things happen in the past week in terms of store openings, some construction projects. Is it time to consider Detroit being a Super Bowl site once again? We'll go back to 2005, my experience, compared to other places I've been for the Super Bowl, and a little gripe about how they choose the Super Bowl sites, and if the Detroit Lions and Detroit City specifically can be host of the Super Bowl once again. But we're going to start off talking about OTAs. And the biggest thing from OTA, we already know, the big offensive line news, Joe Dahl practicing with the tackles. We all know Taylor Decker getting first team reps at left tackle. It's funny, coming into the draft, some people were saying he might be projected as a guard at the next level. And I'm sitting here and, we watch Taylor Decker. We're familiar with him from the Big Ten. Okay, if you want to say maybe he could only be a right tackle, I get that. But guard, that never made sense to me. And we said on the show from the outset that, no, this guy being a guard is ridiculous. In fact, he's our most talented guy in terms of all the tackles. And he probably is going to be the left tackle day one. And it's an indictment a little bit on Riley Reif. If we had Joe Thomas or, healthy Ryan Clady or Cordy Glenn, yeah, Taylor Decker would be coming in as the right tackle. But we don't. We've got Riley Reif, who's serviceable. He's been above average at times, last year he stunk. He was below average. And so, yes, that's a big reason why. But it still speaks volumes of the potential that Taylor Decker has. The fact that he can come in and has the first team reps. It's pretty big. And you appreciate seeing him in there. It feels good about your investment. As we're watching the draft, I was one of those guys saying, you know what? Laramie Tunsil's falling so far. If he falls, the Lions pick him up because he's a stud left tackle in the making, despite the marijuana apparatus picture. You know, he was slated to be a number one pick for so long. Then the two trades happened. You knew the two guys were going to be quarterbacks, Goff and Lynch. But after that, you still thought Tunsil was going to be top 5. The apparatus comes out and, you know, next thing you know, he's falling. And Miami is the team that picks him up. I was fine with the Lions picking him up because I wanted a guy that could be that left tackle. And although I feel confident in Taylor Decker, you do start to listen to other analysts and listen to what they say. They get paid the big bucks. They should know more than myself and a few other people. We do this semi-professional, maybe. I don't even like to call it that. We're just fans that have a microphone and a voice. These guys are the professionals. And so when they say, oh, he's only a guard, I don't believe it, but it kind of, you know, seeps into the back of your mind. When they say things like only right tackle, I didn't believe it, but it kind of starts to seep into the back of your mind. However, the Lions obviously feel different. This isn't set in stone. You know, we could be talking about next week how he played with the right tackle, first team. I think either way, he's starting. He's first team either way. But as of right now, when you open this thing up and you're getting a look at left tackle, you just appreciate it because that's what we really need. A guy you can put on that left side that you can count on. And we already know his weaknesses as opposed to his strengths. Run blocking is a plus for him right now. He's going to have to get better on pass blocking. But that's the case no matter where he lines up. If he's a right tackle, left tackle, doesn't matter. The guy's going to have to improve. And it's not a gimme that his run blocking is going to be superb at the next level. Everything is early. It's a work in progress. But, you know, do yourself a favor and go back to 2015. Look at some film. Look at how much Stafford was getting sacked, how much he was flattened. Go to the Minnesota game, okay? And you'll have a nightmare the following night. Go to the Denver game, and you'll have a nightmare. We've said it on here. Piggybacking a comment that I heard one of my buddies make, you need a good left and right tackle nowadays because guys like Von Miller, they roam. They're not just playing on the left side or the right side on the defensive line or at the linebacker spot. They're all over the field. Back in the day, the left side was by far the most important because of the blind side aspect and usually where guys came in on the defensive side in terms of speed, rushing, or however you want to put it, even blitz packages. Now, defenses are so exotic, you just don't know where they're going to come. And a left tackle still more important, still most important on the offensive line, but right tackle has, in my opinion, and many people will agree, has become more and more important. So whether it's left or right, we need contribution from Decker, from Taylor Decker. I don't know. Did I call him Aaron or Eric Decker earlier? If I did, I apologize. I was talking to somebody at work a couple of days ago. I kept calling him Aaron Decker, and he's like, dude, his name is Taylor. As you know, there's a Decker already in the NFL by the name of Aaron Decker, wide receiver for the New York Jets. So if I did call him Aaron, Eric earlier, I apologize. I know his name. I know his name is Taylor, okay? Taylor Decker. But seriously, either way, left or right side, we need him to contribute. And so far, so good, man. Playing on that left already is promising. I think it shows that they believe in him. It's a little bit of an indictment on Reef, but Reef is good enough to where I don't think Decker would be at the left unless they see something from him, unless they believe he can be a quality contributor day one right out the gate, which would be a huge plus, a huge get for a team that struggled so much on the offensive line last year. The next guy on the offensive line that I want to talk about is Joe Dahl. Now, when he got drafted, you know, it was the thing of he's going to play guard because he's too short. He's 6'3", doesn't have the long arms, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying he won't be a guard, but as of right now, he's playing with the number 2s as a left tackle. Here's the deal with Joe Dahl. He was a tackle at college, and he was a good one. Now, the scheme in which he played in, they say it does not really translate well in terms of the experience, what he's going to face at the next level. But if you look at metrics, he was a superior pass blocking tackle. In fact, one of, if not the best, I don't have my numbers in front of me, but one of, if not the best pass blocking tackle in all of college. And so for me, when they drafted him, he's a guard. And I talked to Alex Reno and different people like, why guard? Why? Especially, I feel like if a tackle is a really good run blocker, that, maybe the transition to guard makes sense because you're going to be doing more, your technique will translate a little bit better if it's a run blocking specialist at the tackle position, more so than a pass blocker. If you're superior at pass blocker, that means your footwork and different things. You would likely translate to a tackle at the next level, but he's only 6'3". So after the draft, we did an analysis of some shorter guys that have been effective, although they're, not the prototypical, tall tackles. You like your tackles to be 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". Taylor Decker's up there. He's like 6'8" or something. And so we talked about some guys like, oh man, his name is escaping me right now. Kelvin Beachum. He's only 6'3", but he's one of the up and coming young tackles in the league. Just signed a big contract down there in Jacksonville. So it can be done. And, apparently the Lions are feeling the same way, to the point where he's not just playing tackle, he's playing left tackle, albeit with the second team, but it's not at guard. And I think that it shows that despite some of his physical limitations, some guys are able to overcome those if their technique is superb. Their hands, a lot of times these shorter guys, their hands and their technique has to be spot on. And I think Joe Dahl is showing that. So, not tooting my own horn, but I wasn't just ready to give up on Dahl as a tackle just because of the size and the measurements, despite what, Mike Mayock or any of those guys, McShay or Kuiper, had to say. If you're superb at pass blocking at college and you've shown footwork and technique and superior hands, although you're a few inches shorter, there's a chance for you, I think, at the next level. And the Lions putting him at left tackle right off the bat, it's not set in stone he's going to be a guard. He can be a swing guy. And I'm not saying he won't play guard at all. Joe Dahl, if he pans out, he's probably taking someone's spot next year, because I don't see a scenario next year where both Larry Warford and Riley Reif gets re-signed. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion. Money-wise, it doesn't make sense. They both might be gone. I don't know. But I think Joe Dahl's taking one of those guys' spot if he pans out. Now, this is a 5th-round pick. He was supposed to go earlier in some people's opinion, but it's not just, a slam dunk. He's going to be a big contributor at the next level, no doubt. He's going to have to prove a lot because, he's a later round pick. But I think that if he does pan out, he will be taking someone's spot, either Reif at right tackle, or it could be a guard situation where Larry Warford is not re-signed. The other news and notes from OTAs was Amir Abdullah with the shoulder injury. Not shoulder injury, shoulder surgery. A little disappointing. I'm expecting Amir Abdullah to really take that next step. Toward the end of the year, he really started to find his way, protecting the ball better. And the offensive line got better toward the end of the year when Lombardi was gone and Michael Ola was on the right side. It seemed like they just started their scheme and the personnel improved. The run game improved. And Amir Abdullah, as a result, he started to play pretty good toward the stretch. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. But when you have a shoulder injury and he's coming off his second year, or coming off his first year, to the point where you have the surgery, he's going to be set back, missing OTAs and missing, training camp potentially. He says he's going to be ready to go. But we don't know for sure. And so it's a little bit disappointing. He had some pretty good games, in my opinion, toward the end. I would say the last 8 games, he looked pretty good. And even in between, given the carries, he looked better than Melvin Gordon, who a lot of people liked better. Tevin Coleman, he looked better than a lot of those running backs, that were picked before him, ending the year with 600 yards, a couple of touchdowns, 4.2. Keep in mind, a lot of this is with an extremely subpar offensive line. But those last few games, toward the end of the year, he really took off. I'm looking at, what's this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The last 7 games, he really showed some improvement. Now, early on, he had a 48-yard game. He had a 43-yard game, which was good. But at the end, he closed the year off. Here's his last 7 games. 12 carries for 44 yards, a solid. 16 carries for 63, 13 for 67, 7 for 23, not that good. And then the last 3 games, he closed out strong. 9 for 77, 8 for 39, and 10 for 44. Amir Abdullah, I like the guy. And there isn't a bell cow running back in the NFL these days, with the exception of like 3 or 4 guys, Le'Veon Bell, maybe Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson. All of them have injury concerns, though. And I was talking to someone about this, about Amir Abdullah, my buddy. In fact, Kevin, who you can listen to along with myself, Count That Baby in the File podcast, Detroit Pistons, right here on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I was talking to him about Amir Abdullah, and I think we were getting caught up on semantics. But ultimately, like I told him, this guy is a feature back. Someone I'm expecting to get about 15 carries a game next year. And after that, Stephen Ridley will get his share of carries, probably 5 to 10, depending on the game. Zach Zenner will get some love. And Theo Reddick will get some run as well, but we know he's primarily a pass-catching guy. I just hate that the clock is set back for Amir Abdullah with this shoulder surgery news coming out. But I'm still expecting big things from him. He's going to be the feature back. He's going to get the most of the carries. And you got to love the work that he did last year. Now, you look at his size and you would say, man, he's real good at running it outside. And he was, but he was really good at running between the tackles. He makes people miss Amir Abdullah. That's the key. He's at his best, not when he's running to the sideline, when he's face to face with you. And with an improved offensive line, I'm rooting for Graham Glasgow right now. Swanson's the starter. I'm rooting for it because I just don't like. I like center. You got to be technical. I like strong centers as well, and I'm hoping Glasgow gets that because Amir Abdullah, even though he's smaller, he runs between the tackles. He makes people miss between the tackles more than you would realize for a guy his size. So overall, it was a little disappointing to hear that, but I think he will come back and be a key contributor. Just got to learn to hold on to that ball. And like I told you guys, Curtis Martin, Barry Sanders, Tiki Barber, Warwick Dunn, these guys are Hall of Fame or close to Hall of Fame level running backs. All of them had struggles with fumbles early on. It's a fixable problem. And so I'm hoping that's the case with Amir. And I don't want to see him returning kicks or punts anymore. I'd rather have a specialist doing that. On a positive note, injury-wise, you had DeAndre Levy, who's he said his hip is getting better and better, and he'll be ready to go 100% once the season starts. That's cool. That's a big addition. That's like a free agent signing. You're getting a Pro Bowl caliber guy, a guy that was, sniffing all pro, one of the best outside 4-3 linebackers in the NFL. So you got to love the fact that he's coming back healthy, ready to contribute. You add to the fact that Tahir Whitehead will be moving to the middle. You got to love the prospect of the linebackers heading into next year. Pro Football Focus. It's time to talk about these guys and the fact that they're labeling guys. And it's not just Eric Ebron. They mentioned Jonathan Cooper as well. They're labeling guys bust after playing 2 NFL seasons. Now, Pro Football Focus, some people love it, some people hate it. They've made some changes. They got these premium service for teams now and all this nonsense. Some people never really bought into their stats at all. Their articles are outright horrible. And you can call it me being a homer. I'll do you a solid and mention some of the horrible articles in the next show if need be. But my opinions of them has been shifting. I was a huge Pro Football Focus fan, subscriber. They changed their ranking system from numbers to grades. And, they're trying to get into providing services for actual teams. Lions were, I think, at one point into it. And then Bob Quinn came along and he said, you know what? I'm not trusting on a website to get my analytics and my metrics, not this one particularly. And then all of a sudden, all this negative press about the Lions is coming forth from Pro Football Focus. Coincidence? I don't know. But we're here to talk about Eric Ebron. As mentioned, calling him a bust after only 2 seasons. So let's look at this thing because I'm not, jumping for joy for Eric Ebron so far. Now, when he was picked, very disappointed, as most of us were. And I'm not even going there with who we could have had and this and that. That's over, okay? It's year 3, and Eric Ebron is a Detroit Lion. He's not a Viking. He's not a Bengal. Those other guys aren't Detroit Lions. He's a Detroit Lion. So what do we have in this guy? What is his contribution going to be going forward? Well, calling him a bust to me is pretty bad. You look at where he was picked and who we could have gotten. Yes, hindsight being 2020 for Martin Mayhew, maybe he would go in a different direction. But that's not the point. You can't. All we can do now is look at the player that we have at hand, and you see improvements. From the rookie year, 25 catches, 248 yards, and a touchdown, to next year, his last year, year 2, 47 catches, so he almost doubles his catches, 537 yards, so he more than doubles his yardage, and 5 touchdowns. So 1 to 5, it's He quintupled his touchdown rate. It's improvement. How does that equate to a bust? I really don't understand. Now, it's important to note that it is time for him to make that leap. I think year 3, and we're going to look at some stats from some tight ends between years 2 and years 3, you often see that big jump. A lot of guys struggle their first year at tight end. It's a hard position to transition to. It's a hard position to grasp a hold of because what's, called for, your responsibilities now, it changes quite a bit. And so I have a few guys in front of me who I would say their first year, they started off slow, and then they picked up, and we're hoping that's what happened with Eric Ebron. Tony Gonzalez, his numbers were quite similar the first 2 years between him and Eric Ebron. Gonzalez had 33 catches, 368 yards, and 2 touchdowns in year 1, then 59, 621, and 2 touchdowns in year 2. Now, his year 2 was a little bit better, catches and yards, not as good in terms of touchdowns, but year 3 is when he took off. And from year 3 on, we have the Hall of Famer, arguably the best tight end in the history of the NFL. Tyler Eifert, now he had some injuries his second year. His first year, he had 39 catches, 445 for yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that is better quite a bit there than Eric Ebron. He was injured in year 2. Year 3, this is where we saw Tyler Eifert be one of the best tight ends in the league. 52 catches, 615 yards, 13 touchdowns. Jason Witten, he took off after his first year. First year, it was 35 catches, 347 yards, and 1 touchdown. After that, he had 87 catches, 980 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Never looked back. One of the best in the business. Jimmy Graham, year 1, 31 catches, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns. You see, a lot of guys struggle. It takes them between year 2 and year 3. Gonzalez, it took him to year 3. Tyler Eifert took him till year 3. Witten, year 2. Jimmy Graham, year 2, because year 2, man, he had 99 catches, 1,310 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Goodness gracious. Gronk is the exception. He was good right off the gate. 42 catches, 546 yards, but 10 touchdowns. Vernon Davis, it actually took him to year 4 because his first year, he only had 20 catches, 265 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's very close to Eric Ebron numbers. His year 2, again, very close to Eric Ebron numbers. 52 catches, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. Year 3, Vernon Davis stunk up the joint. Only 31 catches, 358 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The bust label was then starting to be bandied about for him. And after 3 years, you can kind of start to say that. I would say more so, much more so than after year 2, especially in Ebron's case, a guy that had clear improvement from year 1 to year 2. And then year 4 is where Vernon Davis took off, and he had some really solid years. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer, but he certainly earned and cemented himself as one of the top tier tight ends for a couple of seasons. Year 4, he had 78 catches, 965 yards, and 13 touchdowns. This is an interesting comparison because Ebron is probably closest to Vernon Davis as opposed to any of these other guys. Vernon Davis, athletic freak. His blocking and catching never was, going to be supreme, but he made up for it for being a total mismatch. Linebackers are too slow and cornerbacks are too little. He used that to his advantage, and he chiseled himself a very fine career. That's what you're hoping from Eric Ebron. No matter what, his hands, it's going to be frustrating. He's going to drop passes he shouldn't. He catches some amazing, circus catches, then drops some easy ones. His blocking, oh man, it's bad. And so I'm not ready to call him a bust because it's foolish. I'm not ready to call any of those guys a bust. Jonathan Cooper, none of them. They just got in the league. So pump the brakes, Pro Football Focus. I am expecting a big leap. I think year 3 will be the year that Eric Ebron comes into his own. The ball will be spread around a lot more. No Calvin. I'm expecting a big leap. And so, hey, I'm just going to throw out a prediction here for Eric Ebron. So he went from 25 to 47 catches. I think next year he catches about 60 balls. 248 yards his rookie year, 537. I think he's going to get 750 yards. So 60 catches, 750 yards, and I think he'll get 8 touchdowns. That's a very solid season. That will be, not quite Pro Bowl, but kind of trying to scratch the surface of being one of the top tier tight ends in the league. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, in Detroit. Can it happen again? We'll have to wait and see. But either way, we're going to talk about that and give you a few sound bites from OTAs as we can hear some politically correct, everything is great, looking forward to the next season rhetoric from our boys in Honolulu Blue and Silver. So stay right here as we'll return on the Hindsight 20. Jerry Mallory here, Hindsight 20 podcast. It's simple. If you want your ad to be placed right here, send us an email. Up and coming podcast, established. The numbers are good. Up and coming podcast network. The numbers are good. Send us an email, hindsight20podcast@gmail.com, and we'll make it happen. All right, we're back on the Hindsight 20. Thank you guys for sticking around for the second half or the third period, however you want to look at it. Let's talk about the city of Detroit for a second. A couple of cool things that came out in the last week. And as we know, Detroit's been making some strides in the last, I would say, decade or so, really making some strides to the point where I think it is time to talk about the Super Bowl. Could it be coming back? Should it come back to the Motor City? So, in just this past week, you had, first off, the Nike store opening. Man, these kids with these shoes, I know I'm sounding like the old guy now. I'm 31, and I think once you hit 30, you start saying, oh, these kids. But seriously, man, we were in the shoes, and I was in the shoes, the whole deal, the Air Force Ones. But what they do now, how much they pay and how they line up, it is crazy. Yet and still, I'm definitely looking forward to stopping into the Nike store myself. It's a feather in the cap of Detroit, man. No other way to put it. It's one of those premier stores, and we know all the businesses that are popping up, all the restaurants. I'm at the point where I got to catch up. Born and raised in the city of Detroit, and there's restaurants and places and attractions that, things are happening so rapidly that I don't even know about. And so you got to love that. Then, of course, you've got Little Caesars Arena opening up. A horrible name. Call it Caesar's Palace or something, but whatever. That's going to be another feather in the cap. And then Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, bringing his Flex and Gate company, one of the factories, to Detroit. It's going to open up anywhere between, I've read, 650 to 950 jobs for Detroit residents, for people in the Metro Detroit area. It's a $100 million project. They pretty much supply auto parts like cars, seats, and steering wheels. It's a big business. Me, I'm an electrician. I do electrical construction. So anytime I hear about a huge project going up, that means more work for me, potentially, more work for my brothers, local 58. So I love it. I love it. Detroit has really taken off. Now, our last Super Bowl was in 2005. And, well, not last Super Bowl, but our only Super Bowl really in downtown Detroit, we had one at the Silverdome, was in 2005. 2006, technically, 2006 was the year, 2005 season. And, man, it was nice. It really was. And I've been to other places, for the Super Bowl that week. I've never been to the actual game, not even here. But, despite the weather and it was cold, we had a lot going on. The transportation was spot on. They had all these sites at Wayne State and Campus Martius, NFL Experience, the nightlife, everything was good. And, we can say what we want about Kwame Kilpatrick. He, whatever. He did a fine job. And everyone at the time, I think Granholm was the governor. Everyone got together and they made this a superb experience. Now, I did that one. That was 2006. 2 or 3, I forget, years later, I went to Phoenix for the Super Bowl. The infamous New York Giants, New England Patriots Super Bowl. I just went down there for the week of festivities, didn't go to the actual game. I've got family in Arizona. I said, hey, this would be a perfect time to visit them. I go down there, and yet, maybe because, Phoenix is used to having Super Bowls like every 5, 6, 7 years. Or, I don't know what it was, but it was dull. And for one, everything was spread out. Here in Detroit, everything was kind of centralized, really. All the attractions in the downtown area. There in Phoenix, you had to just travel, and you had to have a car. You had to go from place to place. They didn't have like the public transportation taking you to places like we did. Everybody was just kind of, we've been here before. No big deal. Fans kind of walking around, not super excited. It was very dull. Here was exciting, man, because, hey, we're the underdog. It's a long shot. We finally got something big. We're on the map. And you can just see the excitement from the locals and those visiting. And then the whole Jerome Bettis angle made it exciting as well. Detroit, and when I say Detroit, it's Metro Detroit area. So, hey, all of us, Southfield, Ferndale, Warren, Utica, whatever, all of us. When I say Detroit, I'm talking about us all. I think we know how to have a good time. We know how to put on the show. And from the standpoint of putting things together, as opposed to 2006, we have so many more businesses now. You have the potential of a brand new arena would be up by the time we would be considered for a Super Bowl again. I think it's time to happen. It's time for it to happen, excuse me. Ford Field is still quality arena, top of the line. What usually happens, though, is, especially if you're a cold weather team, your chance of getting the Super Bowl, you got to be a new arena. You look at Minnesota, and they've got one coming up. The Colts, when you get a new arena, you're in that running. Aside from that, it's always the same old teams, man. Same old cities. It's Miami, Atlanta, Phoenix, Tampa Bay, wash, rinse, repeat. And not just the fact that I want to see Detroit in the mix again. There's so many cities that I would love to see host the Super Bowl. Seattle, I would love to see them get in the mix. Denver, I know with the weather people get shaky, but come on, guys. You can have a good time when it's cold out. I know some people shy away from it, especially if you're from a sunny area. You don't want to travel to the cold. I get it. But we had plenty of support. We had plenty of things going on. I'm sure Minnesota is going to have the same thing. They're going to do a fine job. They were granted a Super Bowl. I forget the year. I think Detroit has done enough. I think they've improved enough to where we should be considered once again as a Super Bowl site. Will it happen? I don't know. It's probably a long shot. Maybe it won't. The other thing, I'm just ready for a team to be hosting the Super Bowl, the city to have the team. It still has not happened yet. I just think that's just so ironic that all these years, and teams have been, they get Super Bowl sites, and it's been times where their team goes the year before or the year after, and the year that their team is supposed to host the Super Bowl, their city, the team just sucks or have injuries. It's very ironic that we've had 50 some Super Bowls, and not one time, has that host city had that actual team. Could it be Detroit? We get a Super Bowl in 6-7 years, and lo and behold, we go to the Super Bowl. Well, I'm greedy. I want to go to the Super Bowl sooner than that, but it's going to be cool. One day it's going to happen. It's bound to happen. One of these teams that is hosting the Super Bowl will indeed be a team representing not only the host city, but the actual team being there. Let's listen to a couple of sound clips before we get out of here. I grabbed a few things from OTAs, a couple of the players. I won't play the full clips, but I'll, do a few here and there. Now, if you listen to clips in a film, press conference, you already know you can't oftentimes hear the actual person asking the question. It's very low. The only person mic'd up is usually the player. So if you can't hear the question, you can kind of put two and two together on what's being asked based on, what's being answered. So don't act brand new. You listen to NFL press conferences all the time. We got to start off with the leader, right? Number 9, Matt Stafford. For one, he's looking good. He's looking in shape. Remember Chubby Stafford? His first year in the league and maybe even first couple years. Chubby Stafford was funny, man. He looked like he liked to party a little bit more than he should. That's no more. He's in good shape. He's a little bit older now, 28 years old, becoming a veteran. He's not the young guy anymore, like he mentioned in this press conference. Cool seeing the maturation of the man. Let's take a listen as he talks about life without Calvin and just adjusting to the new faces as a whole on the team.
Obviously he's had experience playing in the NFL, had some really nice seasons earlier in his career, and we're happy to have him. He's a guy that can play all over the field and a quick, sudden guy.
What's it like to have 3 veteran group, like your third, fourth, fifth, whatever, each line?
It's good. It's depth is always a good thing in this league, and we've got some veteran depth at that position, obviously with Andre Caldwell too coming in. So, we've got a lot of guys that have played some football, and that helps us out. I don't know. It's June or May or whatever it is right now. I mean, we got a lot of time. between now and then. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame type player, so some of those plays will, look different for sure. But we've got talented guys. We've got pros, guys that can make plays, and we'll do that.
How quickly did you turn the page? Okay, Calvin's out of here, so we got to move on.
Apparently a lot quicker than you guys. I've been out here practicing without him for a couple days now, but to me, it's every year is different. Every year is different. You got new teammates. You don't have some of the guys that you had last year, and that's it's no different this year. So just got to prepare to win games, and that starts as soon as possible.
That's the approach you have to have if you're Matt Stafford, and we appreciate him being honest. To the point where Calvin's one of the best ever, but they still got to play football, man. There's going to come a time where you have big blows. It could be an injury or a number of reasons why, your roster is shaking up quite a bit. And for this case, it's due to retirement, but you got to move on. He's got confidence in the new receiving core. And, I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what Stafford's going to do now that he doesn't have that security blanket. I don't think he had the huge Calvin security blanket that he had in years previous anyway. Because I've said it once. I said it during the season. I'm not, saying this now that Calvin's gone. It wasn't Megatron last year. And maybe even the year before. He was great, Pro Bowl caliber, but not the huge security blanket that Stafford had in previous years anyway. Let's take a listen to, this guy's not a rookie, but he's getting his first action this year. Alex Carter, a guy I loved coming out of college. So ecstatic that we drafted him. And then he got hurt. And he didn't play at all last year. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this guy, he plays cornerback, bigger guy, can contribute. Maybe not even so much this year, but in the years to come. Let's listen and see what Alex Carter has to say about, kind of being a rookie on the field, but not really, and how he's hoping to contribute to the team this year and beyond.
We just have a great group of guys, and I feel like we can do some damage this year.
So, not to pin you down on this, but what do you think your role can be? I mean, are you fighting for a starting job, or are you fighting for the nickel position?
I'm fighting to be the best that I can be right now. I'm fighting to earn a spot on this defense so that we can win some games.
And even though you missed last year, how much did last year help you now? I mean, people say, oh, it's like his rookie year all over again, but I'm sure it's not.
A lot, yeah, I got that question earlier, and it's kind of in between, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not exactly a rookie, but in terms of reps and being on the field, I am, so I'm in between right now. But it's a good spot to be in for me.
A lot of guys coming back from injury, it's a lot of psychological stuff. I mean, mentally, how are you feeling?
Mentally, I'm fine. Mentally, I'm ready to go.
Nothing in the back of your head. Cool.
I'm ready.
All right, we got to appreciate his honesty in that standpoint. In some ways he's a rookie, in some ways he's not. He's part of the NFL routine last year, in terms of schedules and things like that. But, this will be his first action. I'm expecting him to contribute as much as possible this year, but he'll be a rotational guy. I think eventually, if all things go well, he is that next guy next to Darius Slay. But it won't be this year. Like you say, he's a rookie, and rookie cornerbacks in terms of on the field, it's a big adjustment. Like we were talking about tight end, it's a big adjustment for cornerbacks. And so, with all of the, non-football aspect experience that he got, scheduling and going to practice and watching film, he got all of that, but actually being on the field is a big adjustment. So, he's going to have to get that. We're going to do one last clip. It's Haloti Ngata, a guy that he was disappointing last year. Let's be honest. Hopefully it's a little bit of a change, maybe with some help, a little bit more depth. He's singing praises of the defensive line. I have to agree with him. I'm thinking that's going to be one of the more improved units, and I'm hoping he's a big reason why with improved play this year. But either way, if you're looking at Ashawn Robinson and Stephon Charles and, another year for Teron Walker coming back from an injury and Karan Reed, the depth is there. The talent is there. Haloti Ngata seems confident about it. Let's listen to him.
To welcome in a new guy, Stephon Charles. He's new to this team. He's a beast. He just got to get thanks for saving my life. He's just, he's just changing up. It's kind of like from me coming from Baltimore, learning how to attack rather than just reading a lot. So, but he's gonna be a beast once he gets everything down, and it's just gonna be a fun camp for us. This camp coming around. I see a lot of depth, and it's going to be a lot of fun just to see the competition, how it rolls along, and it's it's going to be exciting. We have so many good guys, great guys that become great players, and it's going to be hard to tell like who's going to come out because we got so many good guys right now. So it's a lot of fun. Aishan's awesome, man. He's just friggin' big and strong, and he's gonna be a great student of the game. You know, he pays attention and just always corrects what he needs to correct, and he's gonna be a great player.
It looks like he takes this very seriously.
With Aishan? Yeah, definitely. He definitely takes it serious, and you can tell when coach asks him about playbook stuff, and he's answering the questions, and so he's definitely taking it serious. And like I said earlier, he's a great student of the game right now.
How much does the leadership change at the top affect you guys with all the culture around the organization, the players?
Yeah, I mean, not much at all. I mean, it's just still football. I mean, that's the business part of the organization. So you just do what you have to do to stay on the team. So it's just football's football.
Pretty good words. Some points from Haloti Ngata we want to point out. I think we do kind of forget that. And I was riding Haloti Ngata hard last year because I was disappointed in his lack of production, and we know that there was some injuries involved. He looked better toward the end of the year. He did adjust. You go from almost 10 years playing a certain position, playing in a certain scheme, in a certain place, and then to now have to attack. It's an adjustment. He mentioned that for Stephon Charles. Maybe that transition for him will take a little bit like it did for him. You kind of forget that about Haloti Ngata as well. We're used to him being an all-pro player in a 3-4, being a space eater, and playing a certain way to go into a defense where he had to attack. He's getting older, and that's the thing that you kind of hate. Time isn't on his side, and so injury still may be a factor. But behind him, it's like Steph Charles, I like him a lot, but yeah, there may be an adjustment. Like to hear those things about A'Shawn Robinson, the seriousness in which he's taking the game, being prepared, being a student of the game. We already know he's big. We already know he's strong. We already know he played at a big school and was one of the better players on that defense. Arguably, second or third best player on a team with just loaded with NFL talent. But to hear that he's serious about the game right now and he's studying hard, those things you like to hear. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the show today. We enjoyed, talking about Pro Football Focus and looking at Eric Ebron. Maybe we can get this whole Detroit getting a Super Bowl one of these years. We can get that hype train started. I don't know. In any event, very fun talking about Taylor Decker, the fact that he's already playing some left tackle. We'll be back next week. As you noticed, the show schedule is a little bit different with the holiday coming up. So you'll be hearing this on Saturday, maybe Monday. And then we'll be back the following Monday, the Monday after Memorial Day, giving you more Lions goodness. As always, I'm Jerry Mallory. You can find me on Twitter at Jerry Mallory NFL. You can find me on Private Detroit doing some videos. And you can find me, as always, on here, giving you the best that I have in the podcast realm. I want to thank you once again for listening. Until next time, we're out of here on the Hindsight 20.